Welcome to the fourth session of the 4+2 Diabetes Reversal Strategy. Today, we are going to talk about being kind to your liver and why that's important in order to reverse insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So, in our model, we've talked about how energy overload is underlying type 2 diabetes and specifically insulin resistance. So, too many calories over time. And what we see is these four blows. So our two buffers, our muscle buffer, which buffers the glucose system, our fat buffer, which buffers kind of all the energy systems, basically become overwhelmed, and we start to see the effects at the liver and pancreas. So looking at this through the twin cycle theory that Dr. Roy Taylor from Newcastle University developed, we see this notion of energy overload with too many calories, decreased muscle glucose uptake. So remember from the last session, our muscles are there to help absorb glucose. Anything that they can't absorb is going to come back to the liver and get turned into fat. And then, of course, fat spillover. If our fat buffers are full, we're going to get this fat spillover, and it's going to increase our liver fat. When we get fat in the liver, what happens is our liver does not respond as well to insulin, and correspondingly, the blood glucose will go up a little bit. So the pancreas will have to produce more insulin, and we start to see insulin levels rise. And so this is really the heart and soul of what's going on with insulin resistance. It's the crux of the matter. We get this phenomena of the liver becoming insulin resistant. So really what we see is when we're not eating, insulin levels have to remain high in order to keep the sugar from getting out of control, because the liver no longer is under good control by the pancreas and the insulin release from the pancreas. We also see with the liver export fat. In these export of fat is triglycerides. So on your blood panel, you'll see if there's elevated triglycerides, it means that your liver is packaging up and exporting fat. And that fat can end up in the pancreas, and that can further down the line decrease insulin secretion and decrease insulin response, making it worse. And so this twin cycle theory is kind of what leads from insulin resistance to eventually decreased insulin secretion, which then results in high blood sugars. So it is the process kind of underlying what is happening in type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. So to stop this cycle, we've talked about this, we need to get rid of liver fat. And if we can get rid of the liver fat, the liver becomes sensitive to insulin again. Insulin levels can go down, and we can actually normalize fasting blood sugars. We also need to get rid of pancreas fat. And by getting rid of the pancreas fat, the pancreatic cells can regain function, and we can get improved insulin response to meals. So again, normalize the post-meal blood sugars. The amount of fat is not a huge amount, right? It's a pound. It's about 400 grams of fat in the liver that is driving this process. And so if we had a magic wand, we could tap you on the liver and get rid of that pound of fat. That would be, that would be all it would take. But we need to need to lose more than a pound in order to get rid of that pound of liver fat. There are other factors, and this is where kind of our third step in the 4+2 is we have to pay attention to those first three things that we talked about, but we also have to think about sugar. And specifically in sugar, it's the fructose. So sugar is made up of glucose and fructose. So a molecule of glucose and a molecule of fructose stuck together makes sucrose, which is kind of table sugar or sugar. The glucose is handled by the insulin system, right? The fructose, on the other hand, goes straight to the liver when you eat it in high concentrations. It goes straight to the liver and gets turned into fat. So it makes things worse. If fat in the liver is driving this insulin resistance process, fructose is only going to make things worse. Same story with alcohol. When we metabolize alcohol, it leads to increased fat production in the liver. Same problem. The third kind of area that we have to be aware of is gut health. And so if we're eating a high fat, high sugar diet or an ultra processed diet, that can actually alter our bacteria, will alter our bacteria in our gut. So that's the microbiome. And so we'll get bacteria in our gut that are not protective or are potentially damaging. And that often will result in the gut getting leaky or some leakage of bacterial toxins or lipopolysaccharide, which is part of a coating of some types of bacteria. Those can get into the bloodstream. The bloodstream from the intestine, remember, goes to the liver. And so this can create liver inflammation, and liver inflammation is associated with fat developing in the liver. So one of the reasons why fat stays in the liver can be because of the inflammation there. The toxins also can get into the systemic circulation. You get systemic inflammation, and that in turn can feed kind of liver inflammation and drive fat in the liver. So poor gut health is another driver of fat in the liver and another potential driver for insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes. So now when we look at this, we have kind of too many calories and we've got our muscles, buffer failing and our fat buffer failing and all that coming back at the liver. But if we're adding fructose and we're adding alcohol and we have poor gut health, all of this is just fuel on the fire. So we have to pay attention to these things if we want to maximize our chances to reverse insulin resistance and reverse type 2 diabetes. So being kind to your liver, start with avoiding the sugar and refined carbs. Think of the sugar equivalents. And here it's really eliminate sugar, right? The sugar is glucose and fructose. So the glucose isn't helping because it's driving the insulin response and the fructose is driving liver fat. So everything you can do to eliminate sugar is important. Only drink the calories you love. We talked about this in the food section. Learn to love water. And this is really decrease or, unfortunately, eliminate alcohol because it's just not helping. And then the third component here is improve our gut health. So pay attention to symptoms. If you're getting frequent constipation or diarrhea or alternating between diarrhea and constipation, it's not normal. Are you getting kind of oily stools, indigestion, stomach, intestinal pain on a regular basis? Do you get frequent heartburn? Are you sensitive to specific foods? Are you getting intestinal bloating after meals? Any of these things, you kind of want to get this checked. One of the things we do in our wellness quotient is we actually assess this, and we get a gut health score. And very often we will see with people with insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes that their gut health is contributing to the problem. And as we fix that, we can improve things. So how do we fix that? Well, one of the key things is what we talked about in the food section. It really is if we get enough fiber. So, you're getting 30 grams of fiber, we can feed the microbiome, the bacteria in the gut, the good bacteria in the gut that will restore kind of the gut health and restore the integrity of the intestines so we don't get that bacterial leakage. Fermented foods. So this is a way that these fermented foods have bacteria in it, have good bacteria in it. The bacteria, as they go through our intestinal tract, help to change the bacterial composition of our microbiome and improve it. So fermented foods can be a key part of this. And then probiotics. Probiotics can certainly be part of the equation here. Now, generally speaking, I don't just tell people to go take probiotics. And usually what I want to do is actually do a proper nutrition assessment because for the most part, we probably don't need the probiotics as much as we need to be eating whole foods. And so really getting people to shift to the whole food diet, usually as we make that shift and get enough fiber, plus or minus a little bit of fermented food, usually when we land there, the gut symptoms go away and we don't necessarily need to go to probiotics. The last thing in the world I like to see is people who don't change how they're eating. They're eating processed junk food, and then they go buy probiotics thinking the probiotics is going to fix it. It simply is not going to do it. So the more important component of this is eat the whole foods. That being said, there can be a role for the probiotics, and usually what I like to do is work with our registered dietitians on this. So the 101 behaviors for being kind to your liver, the 101s are easy. Well, they're not so easy. Stop sugar and decrease alcohol. Maybe they're actually very hard, but working towards these, working to lessen this will help improve. And as you start to see results, you'll start to realize that the importance of these steps. And then the next steps is really, kind of around the gut health. So as you've done the first step of eating to lower insulin, often gut health will really improve. But if you're still having gut health issues, we need to address that. And so that may involve doing in-depth nutrition plan, working with a dietitian to change your diet more dramatically, adding probiotics. It may be part of that journey. So that's the fourth session, being kind to your liver and how that affects insulin resistance, and how having a strategy here helps us in our overall diabetes reversal strategy.